Okay, then we'll get started. Welcome to meeting number 8 for the Planning Advisory Committee. So the next meeting is 2 weeks from today. Can't believe it's already March. March 5th. And we're going to just do kind of a deep dive and take the vision statements from each plan and review those, but then we're going to spend the majority of the time going through the long list of goals that we'll compile from that we've made pretty much every meeting through our discussions. Following that meeting, Jen and I will take those and we're going to take each of the goals as they're categorized similarly in the other plans, so land use, transportation, economic development, neighborhood preservation, and public works. Those are the 5 categories of goals. And we're going to take each of those goals and we're going to develop that survey we talked about. And we'll basically kind of put it together to send out after the next meeting to the advisory committee. And it'll basically be something what we're so far thinking is, and we'll get some input from you next meeting, is do they support the goals that are as they're outlined and have been reviewed, as well as the vision statement, and if there's any goals that they're kind of, in their opinion, that are missing. So then we would have that survey go through to the following meeting. So as I've got in here, 2 meetings in March. March 19th. After the March 5th meeting, I'll be sending out a draft plan with the goals, once we get the goals reviewed next time, to the advisory committee as well. So it'll kind of be 2 emails, one about the survey and one about the draft. And then March 19th, which would be the meeting after the 5th, we will sit down and just have a discussion about the plan draft as you received it, any feedback, specifically. We're targeting April 14th, I believe is the planning commission date. And then I think it's May 10th, but don't hold me to that. I'm just going up with memory.
May 12th.
May 12th. Thanks, Jason. Is the city council date that you can put on your calendar for presenting it to the city council. So throughout that time, we'll have a few opportunities to make changes with you all as we finalize the draft. And April 2nd, so we're not going to skip a beat, but April 2nd, we'll do kind of a recap large meeting. We'll send out a notice to the entire neighborhoods as we did before. The location's still to be determined. So the 2 meetings in March will be here, City Center, either here and I think we'll leave in the chambers. And then the April 2nd meeting, we're still in there finding a location, probably an elementary school or a school again. So I wanted to kind of go through the next dates, all in sequence, so you can kind of get those on maybe save the dates, put them on your calendar. But I'll put a kind of a summary schedule on the website as well. So they're there, so you can find them in case you lose your notes. So tonight we have Stephen Downs, Deputy City Manager from the City Manager's Office here to present. And because we've done the last 2 weeks a really deep dive into the vision statements, and the next meeting being a meeting where that's all we're going to talk about. Once Stephen is done or throughout his presentation, welcome to the Q&A, and then a Q&A with him after. Then we're going to kind of end after that tonight. So any questions for me before I turn the time over to Stephen, or about the process or anything else? Great. Okay. Stephen.
We're all Hoosiers over here this time.
Hoosier? Very nice. What part?
Well, we lived in Bloomington for 10 years. And the last time we were back there, we lived in Vincennes for about 5 years.
Okay.
But I grew up in Indiana.
Okay. Very nice.
So Stephen Downs with the City Manager's Office. My connection here is that me and Murray Lowe went to the same church building for years in Fishers, Indiana. And his daughter-in-law was kind of our backdoor neighbor, and I drove her to our early morning seminary class every morning, and grown up. So, I find if I leave with a picture of my kids, people get mad at me less because they have to think of my kids' faces when they're yelling at me. So, I'll just start with it.
Good strategy.
Yeah. Again, feel free to ask any questions as we go, but, so I've been with the city for just about 6 years in the city manager's office. Before that, I worked for the city of Mesa, Arizona for a couple of years, and then I was in school prior to that. But the city manager's office is more than obviously just the city manager. These are all kind of the areas that fall under that umbrella. I'll dive into a few of those, and I know some of these I think you've had an opportunity to talk with and hear from. Economic development. Kenna, you did kind of community services and our grants. So I'll focus on some of these different areas, but that just gives you kind of a scope. When we say, in the city forum, we say city manager's office, these are all those areas that fall under that umbrella. Our information technology, we're kind of unique. We hired an information technology department about 30 years ago, which there wasn't a lot of IT. In fact, we were just chatting with our IT division manager about if he remembers the days before email, and he does, and he remembers the first email that we sent as a city. And so our IT division manager's been with the city for about 32 years. And so he kind of has that history. And so we have, this has probably changed a little bit because of some recent hires, but there was a period of time where our average IT employee had 20 plus years with the city. In the IT world, that's a long time. And what the city has is a lot of software that we have written in-house. We develop in-house. You don't see many cities do that anymore. It's challenging, so they're usually just buying software, on the market and making all of those work for the city. It can be a very expensive thing to do as cities try to do that. So our ability to have developed it in-house has been an advantage for us. However, that's shifting where it's becoming more challenging to hire software developers. We now live in a market where software developers are being hired by a lot of private companies at wages that we generally have not paid software developers. So we have started to talk about, well, what's the right mix of developing software in-house versus out-of-house. We've actually started to lean, in some cases, more to a third party that integrates with our core systems. And anyways, but we have developers, we have kind of our help desk that support all city staff's devices, both laptops, iPads, phones, computers, and then we of course deal with our network, and that's kind of the security part of it, servers, all of our storage, backup, things like that. It's a division of about 12 employees. Again, I would say the average employee's probably been there 16 years or so. So it's a veteran area that's really served a great purpose to help us kind of continue to progress through this world that changes very, very fast in IT. City recorders, if you've ever obviously voted in an election, that's all comes out of our city recorder's office. We also deal with all public records. We call it, the term used in the state is grandma requests, governmental records, something act, management act, I can't remember that name. But anytime you're requesting a public record about, hey, I want emails on any given topic, we get this occasionally, well, we get this often, but we'll get it occasionally from developers that want records on different properties, things that have happened. And so those kinds of requests go through our office. I'll show you what that request, if you search this on the City of Orem's website,
Get the IT guy.
I think there's corruption in the city of Orem. I just saw that.
yeah, that is.
Did you see his pictures of his kids beforehand?
So anybody that's interested in requests, there's a form that we have on our website where people just do the request, their signature, and then specifically kind of what it is that they're asking for.
Are there certain things that are not requestable?
Yeah, a lot of legal documents, there's, if you've dealt, attorney-client privilege type things, where we're in the middle of litigation, or, and I don't have the list, there are other things though.
Like employee reviews, those things?
Yeah, there are things that are kept that way, but we get a lot of requests for emails and things like that. Now, we've made a change recently in our policy where, depending on the nature of the request, so we have media request us all the time on certain issues. An issue will happen, they want any information related to that. There's media that has some protections as far as paying fees, but there was a period of time where we had some people that would request a lot of information, and it was obviously burdensome on staff, and so state law has the ability to allow us to charge people for that time if it's clear that the intent of that is just a personal issue that they have that they want to research further. And so there are some things with Grandma to be aware of, but generally every record that is available to the public we have access to, and we can fulfill those requests. We've tried to put more things online and just allow you to have access to some of that stuff, but we're not there on that.
Why aren't police reports considered public?
Yeah,
And why do you have to pay for them?
yeah, a lot of times they're very sensitive in nature, right? Dealing with personal issues, if you know, related, especially, obviously, as you know, the breadth of things they deal with, there are a lot of times children involved and things like that. So they have that, and they can speak better to the records because it is a different animal that we usually deal with. And that's why you'll see at the top, that's actually a different office that handles police records. So you go to the police department directly
Oh, I see.
on that.
Stephen Provo had a request one time recently, and the guy requested enough stuff that it would have cost him $97,000 to get the amount of information he wanted. He decided he didn't need all that information.
Yeah. So again, we deal with public records. We deal with elections. If you voted in a City of Orem election recently, we went to vote by mail about 5 years ago. And I mean, it's done what we intended to do, and that's increased voter turnout significantly. And so we've continued that road. In fact, Utah County's kind of followed that pattern, and now it's countywide. They do a vote by mail election.
Any thought of going to electronic voting?
You know, I think that's being tested in some areas, but you know, there was a lot of concerns with security just on by you know, citizenry when we just went to vote by mail on things like people's ability to vote in private. One county commissioner expressed this is going to turn into one spouse looking over the shoulder and telling the other spouse how to vote, because now the spouse doesn't get. I mean, so there's a lot of. So we kind of crossed that bridge. Electronic is being tested in different areas, but I don't think they feel like it's at the security level that they're comfortable to roll it out nationally. But I'd be surprised if it doesn't get there sometime. The other thing that our city recorder's office has done that you'll find interesting, and this is probably going to lead to another corruptible link. But we have a lot of, it's something there.
Again.
I know. Is we have a lot of boards and commissions of various sorts. So we have planning commissions, but we also have commissions related to kind of our library advisory committee or transportation committee or community development block grant, a variety of different ones. Summerfest, senior advisory. We've now actually made those recordings available to the public. I mean, rarely are they speaking of things that are of general interest, but in some of those, like Public Works Advisory Committee, they do discuss things such as utility rates, such as utopia, or other things that maybe have kind of higher citizen interest. And so we've actually, if you go to the City of Orem's YouTube channel, and I'm struggling in many ways right now, if you go to the City of Orem's YouTube channel, you can actually find all of those meetings as of about 6 months ago, recorded and available to the public. If you go into the description, they actually are hyperlinked based on the different agenda items, so you can jump right to a specific item.
Stephen, and that's, we're actually working with the same account. All these meetings that was suggested to record, these meetings
Oh, okay.
are on the same Orem City channel.
Perfect.
Just have to look for the specific list of this neighborhood plan.
Okay. That's really helpful. And I froze, but, that's our, city recorder's office. The other one that I kind of wanted to highlight was our communications division that's there. And that's dealing with everything from website to newsletters to social media and a variety of things. And that obviously, in the world of local government, communications is becoming bigger, as you'd imagine, bigger and bigger focus. More because tools are becoming available that weren't available in years past. With social media, electronic newsletters, access to email addresses, things like that. We used to send out newsletters monthly in the utility bills. We now send them out semi-annually in a mailing, and we email them monthly to our email list, which we've grown to about 19,500 emails. And so we have a pretty big database that we draw on to communicate that way. And then we have a significant following through social media. And you'll see that some departments, police department, for example, has their own like Facebook account and Instagram account. But the majority of the rest of the city is run through just the main city of Orem account. And if my computer wasn't frozen, I could show you some of those things. Another thing you'd be interested in is we're in the middle of building a new website. That new website's going to come online probably in April. This is the first time we run data on how people access our website. Right now, we're about 60 to 65% of people access it on their phone versus desktop. And so this is the first time we'll design a website that is mobile first. And so it's designed to be on a phone, but it's scalable to a computer. And so it'll work on all that, but it was designed where we traditionally would design it for a computer, and then it may or may not, scale to your phone. Yeah, and that became really challenging as we have now a greater percentage of our citizenry accessing it on their phone. So that'll roll out about April. We also have kind of started an innovation program. This started recently when we had an employee who was really interested in this area, and we had a lot of departments that had these big issues that they wanted to tackle, but it was kind of that project that was always on the back burner. We're going to get to it. We're going to get to it. And then we found that there was a group of employees all over the city that their talents were far greater than just the job that they were doing day to day. And so, we've actually created this innovation program where employees from all over the city actually come together to solve citywide problems. So one of the ones we're tackling right now is our increasing credit card fees that we pay out to accept credit cards. It wasn't many years ago where we were paying about $150,000 a year in just our credit card fees for processing, and this year we hit about $600,000. And so it's a really, it's increasing very fast, and it's a fee that we continue to pay. And so a group of employees came together, and again, because we hadn't really looked at it, hadn't been anybody's focus, they were doing their day-to-day job. One of the things that we found, like low-hanging fruit, was in our library we accepted credit card payments to pay late fees. We would allow people to pay a 10-cent late fee on a credit card. Well, we pay a 25-cent transaction fee plus a percentage of whatever it is to the credit card company. So literally, every time we had somebody pay that late fee, we lost money in the deal, right? And so we were able to go in and make some changes to our policy as it relates to credit cards. So what may not be innovative to some is innovative in government. And we continue to try to find big problems to solve that are have either a large price tag financially or causes significant manpower. Let me. Yeah, I will resist. Just know that a new website's coming in April, and it looks more like it, but that's kind of what we're doing. So that's kind of our innovation team. We looked at it with this actually is what stemmed from. We made a change recently to require all of our utilities to be in the name of property owners versus tenants, and the reason was. We knew that this was an issue of a high percentage of rental properties going to collections. And so we dove in further, and we found out that in our rental properties, when they're in the name of the owner, they go to collections 0.5% of the time. Very, very rarely, because there's an owner, well, there's a tenant who's relying on the owner to pay that bill. When they're in the name of the tenant, we have them going to collections about 10% of the time. So 20 times more likely to go to collections. Again, this came out of this innovation team, and we looked through a lot of different options, and the one we settled on was we can allow tenants to pay the bill and landlords to work with their tenants that way, but ultimately they just stay in the name of the owner at all times. And so a couple things happen. One is we anticipate our collections to go down significantly. Two, every time a tenant moves out, we're not having to change over the account, completely and put it in the name of somebody new, do extra reads, extra billing, anything like that. We can just kind of continue on and give landlords the tools they need to be able to charge their tenants, for the utilities. So we try to continue to look for projects and opportunities to save not just financial resources, but personnel type resources in a variety of areas. Human resources, obviously, like many traditional companies that you're used to, this is the benefits and compensation and internal communications and training, recruitment, all those things that the traditional HR department would take on. They've been really busy and proactive in trying to recruit police officers, for example. Police officers is an area where hiring has become more and more challenging for many reasons. The biggest one being that nationally there's a huge decrease in the number of people wanting to go into police work. It's whether it's more or less dangerous, it's at least perceived as more dangerous than it's been. And especially in Utah area, especially on the Wasatch Front, people can go into other professions and make more money and not have to worry about kind of the risk of that. And in general, interest in government jobs is down when the economy is really, really hot. And so we're seeing all of those factors, and so we've been working to try to find a variety of ways to recruit police officers to come work in the city of Orem. Our HR department does a lot of analysis on doing that. And then you have the general administration. Our city's running what we call a council manager form of government. This is nationwide really, really popular. In the state, not as popular, but it acts just as a corporation would. We have a hired CEO who can be hired and fired at any time. That would be our city manager. All staff reports to the city manager. Mayor and city council act as a board of directors. I mean, that's kind of how the structure's laid out. So city manager reports to the mayor and city council as the board, and then all staff reports to the city manager. So the administration of the city is the city manager form of government. And that's kind of an overview of the city manager's office, please.
Just a question about the city manager's office.
Yep.
How involved would you say is the city manager with setting the agenda, like policy agenda?
So usually all policy or ordinances that kind of become law are adopted by the city council, but it's usually administrative in nature and getting the agenda put together. Now they work with the city council, and city council will say, hey, we want to talk about this, we want this, but oftentimes the agenda items are driven by administratively and adopted by the city council. Ryan can probably speak to some of that too. But
maybe talk about goal setting every year with the council and areas of focus. That's probably a good way of explaining how policy
Yep. So every year we meet with our city council, and they go through kind of what their areas of focus are, the things that they're hearing about that are problematic. So this year, or that they just want to focus on. This year, neighborhoods, and in fact these neighborhood plans specifically, and working through the goals of those neighborhood plans. That's an area of focus. Affordable housing has been an area of focus. Over the years, there's been things such as communications, such as transportation, traffic management. So they set kind of that high level, and then it's staff's responsibility to line up budget requests, to line up the financing of the city to try to attack those goals. So, great question. Thank you. Yeah. What else? What other questions do you have about kind of the city manager's office or the administration of the city? Please.
What's a city manager's metrics for success? Like, what is the difference between a city manager who gets fired versus a city manager who gets hired?
Yeah, and there can be a variety of reasons for that, for sure. You know, it's all based on the feedback that the city council's hearing, or their personal experiences with how well the city is being run and how well their goals are being implemented throughout the organization. So they evaluate him once a year. They sit down with just him to talk about, in this case him, his performance specifically. And they use feedback they've heard from employees, the feedback they've heard from the public. We have citizen satisfaction, different types of surveys that go out. They'll look at the goals that they've set out and what the accomplishments are. They ask him for a list of what deliverables have been done in those areas. So he kind of comes every year to the city council in a meeting to discuss that.
And so he stays, he's a hired employee.
Correct.
So he doesn't get elected, but he answers to the city council and the mayor.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. So, and he's an at-will employee, so at any time that the city council didn't feel like he was the right person for the job, he could be gone. So that's kind of the difference where, you know, if it's not a council manager, it's run by the mayor, and that works in many cases. So I'm not saying which one's better. In those cases, it's the voters elect or not elect their mayor, and so the administration of the city is done through a vote of the people.
Yeah. Representative government.
Yeah, exactly. So every 4 years, the mayor is obviously elected or not elected. Where in our case, the city manager, any day could be, if they didn't feel like he was doing the job that he was set up to do.
Okay, cool. Thanks.
Yeah, please.
How many employees are in Orem, looking for one?
So you're about 425 full-time employees. That number ramps up during the seasonal times when we have a lot of seasonal employees with lifeguards during the summer, seasonal employees that can help mow parks during that time of the year when they're growing. But you're kind of consistent, full-time, 425. Different departments like library have a lot of flexible part-time employees, non-benefited. So you probably get up into the 500, 550 number when you factor that. Seasonal, it gets up as high as 900. But you have a lot of lifeguards that work 10 hours a week and things like that.
And are the benefits offered by the city fairly comparable with other industries or businesses?
Yeah, you know, they have some different, retirement used to be a traditional pension system. And for a lot of employees that still work here, it is. That has kind of shifted away with the ability to fund that. And so you see some of those benefits maybe matching more what the private sector gets. 401k type benefits. I would say that traditionally what you find is that government, the pay, the salary isn't what you might see in the private sector. The benefits have generally kind of been what has kind of made up for that. So I would say honestly, probably in most cases you'll see that the benefits are probably better and richer than you see in the private sector. But you ask an employee who worked here 20 years ago what the benefits used to look like versus today, and like most private companies, the benefits have scaled back. Just because they can't sustain the kind of premiums that those old traditional plans would carry today. So we have, like health insurance will have a high deductible plan of, and I can speak for ours, we have a couple options, but $6,000 deductible, $8,000 max out of pocket. There's an HSA there, but a lower premium than maybe you'd see other places. And so, try to balance it out. But I would say today that those things are probably more comparable than you'd see in the private sector. When you factor premium. We do in most departments, what we call a 980 schedule. So, except with library and police and fire are a 24/7 operation. Employees work 80 hours in a 9-hour period. So you have 9-hour days and an 8-hour Friday. So you get your 80 hours and you get every other Friday off. And so you're half staff on those Fridays. And some employees will say it's the greatest part of, it's the pinnacle of their careers. And the biggest reason is the Friday that you work, it's half staff, so there's no meeting scheduled, so it's like your day. Anyways,
Get something done.
Yeah. Anyways, if anybody doesn't have it, I don't want to rub it in, so I won't talk too much more about it. But we have tried to just, I think one of the things you see government starting to do is try to be like you see the private sector, especially in this area with all these tech companies. is trying to be flexible in the job environment and how the job done and where it's done and when it's done, because you see a lot more of both spouses working outside the home, and a lot of different things that just cause the need to have a flexible environment in order to recruit and retain employees that you want to keep your organization. So we deal with all of those issues that I imagine any of you that work have, you see at your employer as well. Please.
So, can you tell us about some of the projects that you work on as assistant city manager?
Yep. So I oversee, in those areas I oversee IT, office, community services, communications, and innovation, and then the finance department, which is its own separate department. So right now we're in the middle of the budget season, and so the finance department, of course, is really heavy in projecting revenues, working with departments to understand what requests will be coming up this year, and then we'll go through a process of what we will put in the budget that we'll recommend to the city council and what we won't, finding opportunities to fund these requests in various ways. So the budget area is really heavy. I also oversee the Summerfest celebration, and so we're, that is it's a 5-day celebration that is worked on by a citizen committee 12 months of the year to secure funding. We have a lot of generous private donors that help fund Summerfest to lessen the tax burden that's put on that, and to maintain that as a quality kind of signature event for our community. So we had just had a meeting last night where we're continuing to plow through the plan of 2020 Summerfest. And then I work in a lot of these areas just kind of to support. Kenna oversees all of our grants. I work with Kenna in that. I oversee the CARE grant, which is a cultural arts and recreation grant that was adopted by the citizens 2004 and then renewed in 2012. So I oversee the administration of that grant, which funds recreation and arts projects throughout the city. There's just kind of a lot of projects that kind of come, as you all see in your jobs, just those ones that the other duties assigned, it's bigger than the rest of your responsibilities. But it's really a fun environment to work in. I love what I do. I love seeing the impact of some of the things that citizens are doing to, one of the pinnacles of my career so far was the All Together Playground. You've seen that just at City Center Park over there. We were able to work closely with 2 mothers with daughters in wheelchairs who needed a place to play with their kids in town. We worked with them to design and to fundraise, and then use 4,200 volunteers in a 7-day period to build the playground. And so it's really rewarding to see those types of projects and ideas that citizens have make it all the way to the end and kind of stay really kind of that grassroots type effort. It's really cool. Thanks for giving me that chance.
What kind of art projects has the grant brought to the city?
So we're building a library hall kind of performance venue just right here. That was funded heavily through that. There's an outdoor side, so we'll talk projects and then we'll talk others, but there's an outdoor stage at our City Center Park that we use for a concert series and heavily during our Summerfest celebration. That was funded with that. We also do then significant grants to nonprofit organizations. So state law restricts how we can use that money, but anytime it goes to a capital type facility, like a building, it has to be government owned in order to do that. So there's really limited numbers of that. We'll own this facility, we'll own that outdoor stage, and we own the Syrah Shell. So the outdoor theater at the Syrah. So those are the only facilities we can put CARE money into right now. We give a grant each year to nonprofit organizations that want to grow and enhance the arts in the city. Some of them big, the Syrah and the Hale Center Theater, because of the nature of what they do, take the lion's share of that money. But, just this year we funded an organization that I hadn't heard of, and maybe you'll remember the name, but it's a group of local artists that go to care facilities and perform specifically for an individual that's in their last days, and they go kind of play their favorite songs. And so you see it from a very, very kind of intimate kind of setting for arts to the large-scale arts that you'll see in Syrah or Hale Center Theater. So when the CARE grant started, the Hale Center before that didn't have a juniors program to give younger children the opportunity to perform in that venue. That money allowed them to start this juniors program and then grow into a pretty significant program now. the Sarah has added significantly more shows, more art classes. They feel like they've been able to elevate the types of concerts and music that they bring into the venue. That all's been possible through the CARE tax as well. On the recreation side, we funded the Altogether Playground, the splash pad up at 8th North, a significant chunk of our fitness center, about $4 million of that has been come through that program. We give money that helps offset the fees for some of our youth sports programs. So, yeah, a variety of things that way too. Multiple other parks and playgrounds have been built that way as well. And what that tax equates to is 1 cent for every $10 you spend is what it is to an individual, and then it equates to about $2.3 million a year. So you see this tax really popular in cities where half or more of the sales tax is being paid for by people outside the city. So a city will vote for it and say, the majority of it isn't even going to be paid by us. And so Orem is luckily, in that case, a retail center that garners the benefit of a lot of other people shopping. That doesn't come without traffic concerns, but it nonetheless helps fund the Sarah. Yeah. What else? Any other, please?
So with what you know about your job and what you do from day to day, what would you feel like would be important for the average Orem citizen to know?
Yeah. I think that while it doesn't always seem this way, citizens' ideas and feedback get a lot more attention than they think. Now, that doesn't always mean that, staff or the city council agrees with every idea that's shared, but that they're considered a lot more than they do. And so when we think of when we think of it from it as an employer, we know that the best ideas for a way to improve the organization often come from the frontline employees that are day to day in the work, in the trenches, interacting with citizens. And it's no different from a city. Our city council relies on and needs the frontline resident, the ones that are in the neighborhoods every day, and they see the challenges every day. That kind of feedback really gets a lot of consideration, a lot more than I think people would realize as they email the city council. It is not maybe daily, but weekly for sure, where I or others will get an email from the mayor saying, hey, I had a citizen reach out to me about this. Can you follow up or look into it? And so I didn't think about much things as related to government when I was growing up. But I don't think I would have thought that, hey, if I actually reached out to them, that would, you don't see that, and this isn't any knock on the state level, it's just a different animal. State level and federal level, and that becomes really challenging. Those people are out of reach often, difficult to get a hold of. One person represents tons and tons of citizens. When it gets down to that local level, these are people that live in your neighborhood. They see you at the store. I mean, these are people that are pretty invested in whatever it is that's happening in the city, and so they take that feedback really seriously, and it helps shape, I think, what we're able to do. So, again, I think it's tough for some people, I think, to see that because some of the nature of, people will have, hey, I got this house in my neighborhood that's been a huge problem with, whether it's hoarding or it's being run as an Airbnb or, an illegal basement apartment, things like that, those solutions don't come quickly, but it's, and sometimes they don't come, and it's not because they shouldn't, but, the personal circumstance of that family becomes very, very challenging to try to navigate health concerns and disabilities and, things that have maybe caused that issue that are simple. But rarely does an idea come across the table that isn't considered and looked at and discussed, or at least the city council member is forwarded saying, can somebody please at least get back to me on this issue and what we're doing to resolve it, or things like that.
So do you delegate those when they come to you, those emails?
Some of them. I mean, Ken is kind of my catch-all for, you name people things like community services, because nobody knows what that means. And when nobody knows what that means, you can give everything to that person. So, I'm just kidding. I hope I don't throw it all.
No, she doesn't.
So there is some delegation, but oftentimes I'll evaluate each issue and see, is this going to be something that somebody needs to know because this is a bigger than one person issue?
Yeah.
right? Like, recently we've had a lot of things about Airbnbs, and we've learned that that's a bigger than one home issue. So those ones, we work with a larger group of people to help solve that problem. In fact, we just signed a contract last week with a company that will help us identify, we'll now know where all of those short-term rentals are in the city, which we haven't known before. And while we don't have currently any plans to do any heavy regulation on it, now there are people that are, you know, they essentially have a hotel now in the middle of their neighborhood, and that becomes challenging. We never knew where they were, and so that came because some citizens, we started to see a pattern of citizens saying, yeah, I've got this, you know, a home in my neighborhood that's been on Airbnb. How do we, you know, what are we doing to address that issue citywide? Well, we didn't know where they were before. Now we've taken out find those. So some delegation, but sometimes it's hey, this is a one-off issue, and I can tackle this much quicker than trying to figure out who to delegate, then I'll usually. What else? Yeah, please.
Well, speaking kind of like the Airbnb concept, when ordinances need to be changed in the city, like with nuisances or other things like that, does it go through the city manager's office first and then goes to the city council usually?
Yeah. So usually, it'll require our attorney to draft something, and then that's the city manager who will usually have seen that and say, yeah, I'm comfortable with, you know. For example, one of the things we'll look at is, hey, that's an ordinance that's actually enforceable. That's one we could actually do something about, and we're not, you know, immune to this either. But sometimes these ordinances get written and there's no administrative, you know, capability to take care of all that. So we try to evaluate those things, but then it always goes to the city council. Generally, what we'll do is we have a work session in this meeting before the city council meetings. So usually these start at 3, city council meeting starts at 6, every other Tuesday. We'll bring the ordinance to this group first, so we can just have an open discussion about, here's what we're trying to solve, give us your feedback, give us your thoughts. Now go take a couple weeks to think about it, because we'll put this on a future agenda to try to give them more time to get additional feedback, let us do additional research. So we try to give them plenty of time to digest and then vote on what that ordinance is, but it does come through administration first, but a lot of times the issue doesn't always start with us, but it does eventually have to be drafted by our attorneys.
Because I do software technical support, and so I'm always just seeing the problems with the software, and I don't really get to see how the good experiences that people usually have, you know, only focus.
Nobody calls you to tell you it's fantastic.
I know that they're about the success stories and all the wonderful things. So I often wonder if it's like, with the Airbnb situation, just as a little example, it's like, there are 2 Airbnbs just within a few houses from where we live. And one is a great experience for the neighborhood, and the other one is not a good experience. And so it's like, I know like you probably hear mostly all the bad things
for sure.
come in, but there could be positive sides that you don't know about. And how do you kind of balance that?
It's you know, I mean, it's a good point, and I think you're talking the Airbnb issue, but I think you're also thinking that all these issues, right? Every issue that way. You know, with the Airbnb one, I think we do recognize you know, how Airbnb started was some people that used this as a way to be able to afford their home. It's what allowed people to stay in their home. It's what what they felt like, when I'm out of town, I now have people in the home, and oftentimes that's better than an empty home sitting there for maybe a long period of time. And so there's also economic benefits. When we reached out to this company that helps us identify Airbnbs, I mean, they're incentivized to keep Airbnbs around. They make money because cities want to know where the Airbnbs. If all the Airbnbs get eliminated, then they have no business anymore. So they've talked to us a lot about, you know, if we were to ever go down the further restrict, that we need to be careful to overdo it, because there are some positive benefits from that. But so for us right now, it's just, we just want to know where they are. Because our police department responds to these homes, they don't always know that it's, you know, an Airbnb, things like that. And then just to be able to see the trend of growing. We had a 40% increase in listings from 2018 to 2019. And so it's a growing part of, you know, our city. It also has impacts on affordable housing. You see states like Hawaii that are really cracking down on it, because everybody now can can Airbnb their home instead of renting it to a long-term tenant. And now there's workers that, where they used to have a place to rent, those places are now being used as Airbnbs versus, so you see some states that are saying affordable housing type issues because it shrinks the event. So it is a very, very complex issue.
Yeah.
That we, you know, I can't say government doesn't sometimes, you know, squash the, what is it, hits the nail with the sledgehammer, you know? But we're trying to be better about balancing that type of thing as well. So, great question. Please.
Does your office also work with budget forecasting for like future years?
Yep. So our finance department does that, but we work obviously closely with them. So yeah, they look at, we actually just recently hired our first budget officer, so somebody that's there to think about these long-term and other issues that they can solve with the budget. But yeah, right now they're forecasting these revenues. We just finished, we used a financial advisory firm for local governments to do a kind of a long-term financial sustainability. And, you know, if expenses continue to grow the way that, you know, we anticipate they will, and sales tax grows, you know, the way that maybe we anticipate it will, how big does the delta get? Because right now we rely heavily on sales tax, and that's worked for us for a long time, and we're lucky to have that. But, you know, where we used to have the only Costco in the county, now there's a Costco in Lehigh, so everybody in the Spanish Fork that wanted to go to Costco used to come to Orem, now they stay in Spanish Fork. You see that with a lot of different retailers, which we call it leakage, but it's our ability to really rely on the sales tax long term when other communities are starting to become retail centers too. Mm-hmm. And population growth, you ask anybody in Orem, and Orem is growing for sure, but not near like Saratoga Springs and Eagle Mountain. And so when the population centers grow up there, and all the retail they need is up there, and then you throw in the Amazon, you know, and the online retailer, we just know we can't rely on sales tax like we used to, and be able to continue to fund public safety and all those. So yeah, we are really starting to look at that. This last year was the first time in 41 years the city's raised property taxes, and it was to fund officers because we knew those officers need to be here during tough times, and we can't rely on the sales tax to be there during a tough time. So we had to look at that for the first time. Well, it wasn't the first time we looked at it in 41 years. It's the first time it was ever actually implemented in 41 years. So, yeah, we do think about those things, and all governments do. And every government will tell you, oh, there's never enough. There's never enough. And listen, your company can probably say that too, right? That there's more needs than there are resources. And so we're trying to balance all of those things because we know we're not the only taxing entity. While the city has their needs, the school district tells you about their needs, the county tells you about their needs, and so we try to coordinate our message, you know, our timing. We're trying to look at the overall impact, and sometimes it's harder to do than others, but that financial sustainability component is a big thing that comes about. Please.
You mentioned Amazon.
Yeah.
They don't pay, are they collecting sales tax now?
They are now, yep.
They are now.
So,
how long has that been?
So the state of Utah entered into a deal with them, I want to say about 3 years ago, right? Do you remember when that Amazon deal kind of came down?
Yeah, it might be 3 now.
3 years.
But it's not the same rate that other retailers collect here. It was negotiated by the governor.
So how's that, why did they get a better rate?
Because they're online, so it's all.
And so at the time they were negotiated, Amazon had the ability to say, we don't have to pay any. Because how the law was written at that time was if you don't have a physical location in a state, you're not required to remit sales tax. Now, that means that you and I are supposed to, every year when we get to do our TurboTax, and it says if you
Pay sales tax in another state?
yes, or is there anything that should have been taxed that wasn't?
Yeah.
I was like, no.
We're supposed to have kept all those receipts and then enter what that amount is. We know that wasn't happening. So Amazon ultimately at that time had the trump card of we don't have to do this. So if we're going to do this, then we want a discount rate. And it was just, it says, significant, and it's not like they're not getting like a 90% discount. I mean, it's minimal. but they do get some. But we collect a significant amount of money from Amazon now that we never did before.
But is that a federal law?
It does trickle down to the city.
Is that a federal law that they were relying on?
It's called the Wayfair for South Dakota case.
Yeah, it was just a year or so ago.
That was overturned. So up until that point, I guess, and I'm not the history on sales tax, but it used to be, this was all put in place because of and Ryan, you can probably speak this better, but if I'm close, don't,
Oh, you're fine.
I'm just kidding.
I
So,
don't know if I
like
can see
the traveling salesman years ago, where people would travel outside their state, and it was how are they going to collect sales tax and all that? So they kind of made this rule of if you don't have a physical presence in that state, you don't have to do the collection and remission of sales tax. But that was all thought of before the internet ever existed. And then the internet comes on, creates this whole new animal, and then there was a challenge made up in South Dakota that went in favor of, in this case, the state, requiring now online people, saying they can't be exempt from the sales tax. And that's what kind of changed that. That's all really, really recent.
So that negotiation for the discounted sales tax rate happened before that court decision?
Yes.
Okay.
So I don't know, I can't speak to how that will change and how long that agreement with Amazon is in place, and then at some point they'll be able to say, I mean, now Amazon has distribution facilities in Utah too, so now they have the brick and mortar. So I don't know how long the agreement was for and at what point it gets reviewed. I can't speak to all that. But the thing with the Amazon too is where, somebody, for example, that lived in Vineyard, Vineyard doesn't have much retail, and it's a growing city, so all the shopping was done here. But when they now shop online, Vineyard collects that sales tax, and Orem historically would have, because they would have shopped in Orem. And now Vineyard has, this is getting the weeds, but Vineyard has their own zip code. Their zip code used to be attached to Orem's, and so when they would track sales tax, Orem was probably getting money from Vineyard, and we didn't say anything. We knew eventually it would get settled, so why say something? And anyways, but you're just seeing that online is really being, that is money that generally somebody would have come to Orem to purchase that item. Now they do it at home, those cities get the sales tax. That all is playing to this, our inability to just rely, let's say sales tax will keep growing at 8, 9, 10%, and we'll be fine. We're not, we saw 2.3 last year. We're not seeing the type of increases that we were used to. So.
I found an article online that basically says Amazon gets a certain percent of what they collect as a handling fee. Because the challenge with online retail, their argument always was, well, we've got to collect tax for 50 different states then, or each local area sometimes has a different sales tax, and so.
So that was part of the negotiation?
That was part of the negotiation.
Okay.
Jeff Bezos is worth how many billions of dollars?
Was that, yeah.
I feel sorry for him.
Yeah,
Right.
it's tough.
That's that program
It's
that's
gotta
on
be tough to
Amazon.
manage.
They don't pay any business taxes. The only tax they pay is sales tax. That's it.
Yeah.
They don't pay a penny.
Yeah, it's crazy.
It is. It's not.
What else? Any other kind of questions? Okay. Grant, anything else you wanted me to cover?
I don't think so.
Okay. Well, thanks for letting me come, and appreciate your work and being here. I know it's a commitment to come here every couple of weeks, but as we're in kind of that last of our 9 kind of neighborhood plans, this has been really good. And I'll say too, we're starting this year a landlord, we've never known where all the rental properties are. We're licensing rentals for the first time. That all came from neighborhood plan. Every single neighborhood in their plan specifically talked about, not that we shouldn't have rentals, but we just need landlords to be as invested in that property as anybody else is. And that all came from neighborhood plans. And so these plans are looked at, and again, it's one of our city council's focus. So as you think about your goals and as you go through this, know this is not some menial exercise that doesn't lead to anything. This is something that will be considered and looked at, and we hope to continue to report on successes that we have in solving the challenges that you identified in it.
So are you getting rentals being registered?
It's July 1, it's
Oh,
effective.
July 1.
We have we've worked on getting all the addresses and the online system already so that people can do that. And it's a minimal fee. It's $50 per landlord for the year. So we tried to be minimal in it, but the fee was, right now, we already have an issue of when our officers deal with with properties that are rentals, they have extra layers because they've got to work not just the tenant, but also who the owner is. And so there's just a need for additional staffing in that area to deal with those issues. We have neighborhoods that are, I think Geneva Heights is probably our highest percentage of homes that are rentals now.
Probably
Are 60% rentals. Listen, it's a roof for somebody. We're not saying it shouldn't be a spot for rentals, and not everybody can afford a home, especially the down payments to try to get you a home today. But it doesn't take away the challenges when you have a neighborhood that's 60% rentals. And so this is just an intention for us to be able to have better information on landlords, so that when there's issues, we can work with them without how it is currently. Our officers go out, they find out it's a rental. If it's, depending on the type of issue, the tenant's not quick to say, yeah, here's my landlord, give him a call. So we then go to the county records, and we find county record property information, or we just get a mailing address. And so if we can get on the white pages, and search it online, we'll maybe find a phone number. If not, we're sending mail. And now we're just saying, just give us your phone number and email so we can get a hold of you quickly and help hopefully get quicker resolution on some of these issues. But also bring them into the conversation about neighborhood challenges, and not let them just be kind of strictly investors, but also invested.
So
Please.
is that gonna track down all of the people that are renting illegal apartments?
So no, I mean, that alone won't, only because we don't know who they are yet. But what it does do is, we know where all the legal basement apartments are, and they'll all have to be registered. So we know, and then, so when we come across an apartment, it'll be just as simple as, are they registered and are they not registered? And it gives us something that we can move on much quicker. The thing that we deal with that too, and I think we all be sensitive to this, is that you have two parties involved. You have the person renting the basement, and then you have the person renting the basement. The person renting the basement has no idea, or is even thinking about, was this legal or is this not legal? And so, as our officers go out to those situations, you've got young families, sometimes young kids that they've got to be, not that they don't do something still, but they've got to be sensitive to this family saying, yeah, I can't just be out by the weekend. So we're trying, and ultimately what we want to do is not say, you're not allowed to rent your apartment, but just come into compliance. And so we're working on better ways of saying, hey, let us give you a reasonable amount of time, assuming it's a safe situation. Let's give you a reasonable amount of time that you can come up to compliance, and here's what you need to do. And we're not even going to kick the people out in the meantime. But if by some date it's not in compliance, and that lease is now up, you won't be able to continue to register. So then hopefully people still have the roof over their head. The owner has potentially the financial resources to come into compliance. And then we don't have a legal apartment we have to worry about in the future. So we're trying to kind of weigh all that. But yeah. Well, yeah.
This sounds awesome. Is there going to be are there going to be penalties for not registering?
Yeah, I can go through, I can't remember the kind of misdemeanor but yeah, there would be a fine for not complying. But in most cases, here's the fine, and if you come into compliance and take care of it quickly, we don't really stick with the fine, but the fine's there to just get you to come into compliance. So yeah, there would be that. But again, we're trying to, be reasonable about that too. But if there isn't anything, it just things don't happen. Question?
What constitutes an illegal apartment?
Well, I mean, there's a variety of things as far as like kind of building codes, and Jason can probably speak to that best. Jason, would you mind just?
So a single-family home can be rented to one family. There's certain definitions of what that means. But if somebody rents their basement to a separate family, then that would be a legal apartment in that case. Or we do allow accessory apartments. If you go through the right process and get a permit to create that as a secondary unit in your home, then that constitutes a legal accessory apartment, and the owner can live in there or a renter can live in there, and vice versa. But there is ways to legally create an apartment in any home in the city, but there are requirements for that. So if somebody just has a secondary entrance and used to be, grandma apartment type thing, used to allow family there, now all of a sudden you say, I'm just going to start renting that now, without going through the city's process, that would be an illegal apartment at that point, unless it's strictly family related.
And would you say, high level, what are some of the kind of basic requirements that generally people have to
So the building code, the main thing is it has to be separation of, certain air. So they don't want a secondary unit to have the same, so if there's a fire in one unit, it's not going to install a second to the other one. So fire safety, things like that will be required. Egress, stuff like that is required. Parking is also a requirement, so you have to have at least one off-street parking stall designated for that specific unit. The main expenses are going to be the building related, whether it's some fire separation, sheetrock, things like that will be required.
So would a caregiver's apartment be considered an accessory, or can it be grandma's apartment?
So if you have a parent or whatever come and live with you, and they happen to have their own space, but it's all connected as one unit, then that's considered a unit, and you allow a family member to live in that as long as it's treated as one home. So sometimes you'll have a door that you'll, close or whatever, but it's all family related. You're not collecting rent, you're not doing that type of thing. We also have another exception for an elderly person or couple. They get to an age where they need some care in their home. They're still well enough not to go to a care facility, but they want to stay in their home. We do allow, if you're over 65, you can have up to two. So a married couple can come in and live in the same housekeeping unit, and they can charge rent and all that kind of stuff, and not be constituted as an illegal. So there is an exception for a caregiver.
And a single family is defined as 3 non-related
Three
maximum.
non-related, there are some, it gets down pretty significantly, grandparent, things like that. So there are, it constitutes a related individual, but a second cousin, twice removed is not a family member. So,
But, for instance, a family could have 2 non-relateds living with them, 3 non-relateds,
so right now,
and you still would not enforce, right?
so we do have, I guess I better run some missionary rules. So a family can have 2 unrelated, like missionary companionship, or whatever, live in the home and pay rent without, and there is an exception for that as well. But typically, it's a family, or a, related family, if a husband and wife, or people live together and they have children, that constitutes a family as well. Or if it's 3 unrelated people, let's say you have 3 students, then they can have up to 3, and that would constitute a family as well. There's like 6 different definitions that all are under the umbrella of family. Typically, it's either a family, a traditional family, or up to 3 siblings.
How many generations constitute a family?
Are you grandparents, do they count?
That gets into a little issue, but typically if it's a separate housekeeping unit, so if you have a husband and wife, and they have a brother and he has a wife, or you have parents, and then they have a son moving back with his wife, that's 2 different families. Typically, the police or whoever are going to go out, and as long as they're all in the same family, they're not really going to get into that.
Okay.
Because it's a little difficult.
I'm trying to learn with the family search app to see like make them pull that out.
We talked about that.
Typically, if it's a multi-generational, if they all live in the same home, they're all related, they're typically not going to press the issue typically.
Okay.
If you can tell that there, you have 6 unrelated people in there, and everybody can prove that they're then they will go after and try to resolve that to meet the definition. So there is some, I wouldn't say leeway, but there is some discretion that the police use in determining whether they prosecute.
Okay, anything else? Okay, thanks again, appreciate it. Grant, that's it, right?
Yeah.